Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 4, The Rendlesham Forest Incident.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, today we're tackling a big one, Rendlesham Forest. It's this incident back in December 1980. Lots of reports of strange lights near the forest in Suffolk.
Right, near RAF Woodbridge, an American air base at the time.
Exactly. And it involved U.S. Air Force personnel seeing something.
And it's become, huge. People call it Britain's Roswell. It's probably the most famous UK UFO case, definitely one of the best known globally.
It really is. So our plan for this deep dive is to try and unpack it all. Look at what supposedly happened night by night.
What evidence do we actually have? What are the different explanations people have come up with? We've got eyewitness accounts, official documents, police logs.
And of course, the skeptical viewpoints, too. We'll try to piece together what the sources tell us.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. December 26, 1980. Early hours, like 3 a.m. GMT.
Uh-huh. The first reports come from a security patrol near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge. They see lights that look like they're coming down into Rendlesham Forest.
So the immediate thought is, what, a plane crash?
Yeah, that seems to be the initial reaction. Makes sense, right? Near an airfield.
But there's another angle, too, isn't there? Astronomically.
Yes, apparently there was a pretty bright fireball, a meteor seen over southern England around that exact time. So that's one possible explanation for those initial lights.
Okay, a meteor. But then we get Lieutenant Colonel Halt's memo. Charles Halt. He writes later that servicemen actually went into the forest.
Right, and his memo claims they saw a glowing metallic object. It had colored lights, and it was moving through the trees.
Moving through the trees. And he mentioned something about animals.
He did. The animals on a nearby farm went into a frenzy. That's a quote. Intriguing detail.
Could be anything, I suppose, but definitely adds to the atmosphere.
It does, though we should remember Halt wrote this memo January 13th, 1981, so a few weeks after the event. Dates and times might be slightly off,
Memory fades. Good point. And then there's Sergeant Jim Peniston. His story came out later.
Much later, yeah. He claimed he actually encountered a craft of unknown origin, touched it even.
Whoa. Okay, that's a massive claim. But it wasn't widely reported at the time.
No, not really. And crucially, there's no immediate corroboration for that specific close encounter from others who were there initially. It's mostly his account, emerging years down the line.
Right. That makes you wonder, doesn't it? When someone adds such a huge detail later.
It definitely complicates things. You have to weigh it against the earlier reports and what others said or didn't say.
Okay, so while this is supposedly happening in the forest, what about outside? The local police were called, weren't they?
They were, around 4 a.m. local time on the 26th, but their log is pretty clear.
What did they see?
Nothing unusual, basically. They reported seeing lights, yes, but only from the Orford Ness Lighthouse, which is miles away on the coast.
Ugh, the lighthouse. That's going to come up again, I bet.
Almost certainly. So police say lighthouse, some military personnel say metallic object. Bit of a discrepancy there.
Just a bit. Then the next morning, the 26th, servicemen go back to the spot.
They find a clearing, and in it, 3 small depressions on the ground, in a triangular pattern.
Landing marks.
That's what they thought, maybe. They also reported burn marks on nearby trees and broken branches, so they called the police again.
And the police reaction this time. Still thinking lighthouse.
Well, they looked at the depressions. Their assessment at 10:30 a.m. could be from an animal, like rabbit diggings or something similar.
Rabbit diggings, right. Not quite craft of unknown origin. There's a photo of this site, isn't there, in Georgina Bruni's book?
Yeah, she documented the case extensively. The photo shows the clearing and the alleged marks.
Okay, so that's the 26th. Lots of conflicting reports already. What happens next?
Things quiet down for a day. Then we skip to the early hours of December 28th. This is when Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Halt gets personally involved.
The guy who wrote the memo. He goes out there himself.
He does, with a small team of servicemen. And this time, they bring equipment, specifically an ANPDR-27, a radiation detector.
Okay, now we're getting technical. What did they find?
Well, they took readings in that triangular area with the depressions. They got about 0.07 million nodules per hour.
Is that high?
It's slightly elevated compared to the background level they measured nearby, which was more like 0.03 to 0.04, but, it's not dramatically high. Natural radiation varies. They also found a similar small burst reading about half a mile away.
So a slight anomaly, maybe, but not exactly glowing radioactive green goo.
Pretty much. But the really crucial thing Halt did that night was record everything.
On a tape recorder.
Yeah, a microcassette recorder.
Yeah.
This becomes famous as the Halt tape. It's basically a real-time audio log of their investigation.
How's that? See?
You hear them taking the radiation readings, discussing them. You hear them seeing a flashing red light off to the east.
The east, towards the coast, like the lighthouse again.
Exactly the same direction as Orford Ness. And the flashing pattern described on the tape seems to match the lighthouse's 5-second cycle later analysis showed.
Okay. What else is on the tape?
Halt also describes seeing other lights, 3 star-like objects in the sky.
Star-like, not like the metallic craft described earlier.
No, these sound different. He described 2 to the north, 1 to the south, about 10 degrees above the horizon. Said the brightest one hovered for hours.
Covered for hours. That sounds unusual.
It does. He even said it seemed to beam light down occasionally. But again, there's a potential explanation.
Let me guess. Actual stars.
Pretty much. Astronomers look at the positions he described. The southern object, the brightest one. It lines up perfectly with Sirius, which is the brightest star in the night sky. Atmospheric effects can make stars appear to flash, hover, or even send down beams, especially near the horizon.
Right. So possible misidentification again. It helps to know the area, I guess. Rendlesham Forest isn't exactly tiny.
No, it's nearly 6 square miles. Pine plantations, heathland, run by the Forestry Commission, and it's right next to RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge.
Which were active U.S. Air Force bases then. The incident area was just east of the Woodbridge runway, right?
Yeah.
Stretching towards a farmer's field.
Correct. And that Orford Ness Lighthouse. It's about 5 miles east of the forest edge, and it was known for being incredibly bright, one of the most powerful in the UK.
So you've got military bases, a huge dark forest, and a very bright lighthouse nearby. Kind of a recipe for seeing weird lights, maybe?
It definitely provides context for potential misinterpretations, yeah.
Okay, let's dig into these sources a bit more. The Halt Memo, Unexplained Lights. That's the official title.
Yep. Written January 81, released under the U.S. Freedom of Information Act in 83. We mentioned the date discrepancies.
And the UK Ministry of Defense, the MOD. Their investigation was...
Pretty cursory, it seems. Based on what was eventually released, they didn't seem to find any other corroborating reports from UK or US sources beyond Halt's memo.
But Halt himself later said it was extraterrestrial, and there was a cover-up.
He did. His stance evolved quite significantly over the years, which is something skeptics often point to.
Then there's the Halt tape itself, released in '84.
The audio recording. It's been transcribed, analyzed. It's a key piece because it's contemporary to the event, you know, captures the moments.
But even on the tape, the light he sees matches the lighthouse timing, and the star-like objects match actual stars.
That's what the analyses suggest, yes.
What about other witnesses from the first night, December 26th? We got statements later, right?
We did, yeah. In 1997, statements from Ed Kevensag and John Burroughs surfaced. They were part of that initial patrol.
And what did they say? Craft of unknown origin?
Actually, no. They both stated that they pretty quickly realized the flashing light they were seeing was just the Orford Ness lighthouse.
Ah. So the guys actually there on the first night ID'd the lighthouse. That seems significant.
It is. Burroughs did mention hearing a strange screaming noise and seeing agitated farm animals, similar to Halt's memo.
But the noise, could that be explained?
Possibly. There are muntjac deer in the area. They're known to make a loud barking or screaming sound, especially when startled. Could be that.
Okay, so eyewitnesses identify the lighthouse. Then fast forward to 2010, Halt doubles down.
Yep. He issues a formal affidavit, reiterates his belief in an ET event and a cover-up.
But people pointed out contradictions.
The skeptics did, yeah. Comparing the affidavit to his original memo and the tape, they found inconsistencies in the narrative.
And didn't the base commander at the time also speak out around then?
Yes. Colonel Ted Conrad. He was Halt's boss, the commander of RAF Woodbridge in 1980. In 2010, he gave a statement.
And he backed Halt up.
Quite the opposite. Conrad stated pretty firmly that they saw nothing matching Halt's descriptions, couldn't validate his story. He was critical of the cover-up claims and disputed Peniston's close encounter story, too.
Wow. So the base commander basically says Halt's story isn't accurate? Conrad even suggested,
Right.
What a hoax?
He floated the possibility, yeah. Said maybe the whole thing was some kind of prank or hoax that got out of hand. That's a pretty strong counter-narrative from the top.
Definitely. What about the Suffolk police again? Their logs from the time.
We mentioned them being called out twice. Their official logs show they found nothing out of the ordinary on either occasion, attributed the ground marks to animals.
Did any officers comment further?
Inspector Topless, who wrote a report, noted that powerful lights from the airbase beacons and the Orfordness Lighthouse could easily create strange visual effects in the forest and sky. Though apparently one of the officers who attended remained a bit unconvinced it was all normal. Just a hint of doubt there.
Still, the official police stance was, nothing to see here, move along.
Pretty much. And that ties into the UK Ministry of Defense file that was released in 2001.
What was in that? The smoking gun of the cover-up.
Not really, no. Mostly internal memos, letters responding to public inquiries about Rendlesham. There was no evidence of any deep, serious investigation in the released papers.
So the Moji didn't think it was a big deal.
That seems to be their stance. Consistent with what they'd always said, they only investigate if there's evidence of a potential threat to UK airspace, and they didn't see that here. Lord Trefgarne, a defense minister at the time, basically said as much in documents within the file.
Okay, so the official UK position was essentially a shrug.
More or less. No perceived threat, no major investigation needed from their perspective.
Right. Let's pull together the skeptical analysis then. We've touched on most of it. Hoax is one possibility.
It's been suggested. There was a claim by a former U.S. security policeman about faking lights with a vehicle, but no proof it connects to these specific dates. Downed Soviet satellite. Also suggested, also no evidence.
So the main skeptical view is it's a mix of things.
Exactly. A combination of understandable misidentifications and maybe some embellishment over time.
So recap. The first lights. Probably that meteor, the fireball.
Plausible, yeah. Fits the time.
The landing marks, rabbit holes, according to police and foresters.
That was their on-site assessment.
The flashing light seen by Halt and others. Almost certainly the Orfordness Lighthouse, given the direction, timing, and even some eyewitness accounts.
The evidence for the lighthouse explanation is pretty strong, yeah.
And the star-like objects Halt saw. Likely bright stars like Sirius, perhaps looking weird due to atmospheric effects.
Again, aligns well with astronomical data for that time and location.
Brian Dunning's skeptoid analysis really hammers this home, doesn't it?
It does. He argues, quite convincingly, I think, that every single element Halt reported has a perfectly rational explanation. He also suggests the later claims about debriefings and threats were likely made up for TV appearances.
His point about weak evidence not becoming strong just because you bundle it together, that's key.
It's a fundamental part of critical thinking, isn't it? You assess each piece on its merits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yet the story persists. They even built a UFO trail in the forest.
They did, in 2005. Shows the public interest. And they put up a sculpture in 2014 based on sketches of the supposed UFO.
It's fascinating how it took hold. Even Jenny Randles, who wrote one of the first big books on it. She changed her mind later.
Yeah, in 2010, she came out saying she doubted it was really ETs. She leaned more towards misperceptions of normal stuff and weird circumstances being the main cause, though she did admit some puzzles remain.
That's quite a shift for someone so involved initially.
It shows how interpretations can evolve as more analysis is done.
Yeah, there's that weird SA hoax theory more recently.
Oh yeah, 2018. A claim that British SA soldiers rigged lights and balloons as revenge against the USAF for something that happened earlier.
Sounds elaborate. Any truth to it?
Well, researcher David Clark looked into it pretty thoroughly. His conclusion, the SAS revenge story was itself a hoax. Just another layer added to the legend.
Wow. So it just keeps getting stranger.
It really does. Rendlesham seems to attract these stories.
So wrapping this up, Rendlesham Forest. It's clearly not simple, is it?
Yeah.
You've got eyewitnesses, you've got memos, tapes, police logs, official denials, skeptical explanations.
It's a real mix. And you're left with questions like, even if the lights were the lighthouse and stars, why did trained military observers report them as something so extraordinary? At least initially.
And why do the stories, especially from key people like Halt and Peniston, seem to change or gain details over the years? Is it memory, later conviction, something else?
Those discrepancies are hard to fully resolve. Were they genuinely seeing something inexplicable? Or was it a cascade of misinterpretations under pressure in a confusing environment? Or, as Conrad suggested, was there some kind of deliberate element involved?
The truth, whatever that is, feels like it's still hiding somewhere in those woods. A really classic case because it has so many layers, you know.
Absolutely. A fascinating puzzle.
That is the end of this episode. Until next time. Keep to the shadows. Some legends are best left undiscovered.